In the beginning, it was perfect. The late night conversations, the texting, the obsession, and then one day the energy just sort of shifted. Her text came slower and later, the energy just totally dropped off, and you're wondering what the hell just happened. The truth is, honeymoon phases don't last forever, and here's why it's not supposed to. The unfortunate truth is, the honeymoon phase is a high, not a foundation. It's driven by chemicals, not compatibility. And this is where a lot of people just get it confused, because here's what really happens. When you are first with someone, you are going to project something onto them. That projection is usually called a fantasy projection. Now, these things could be weak, they could be strong, but here's what I mean by that. During the honeymoon phase, I am trying to act like the other person's perfect example of a man. She is trying to act like what I would want in a woman. Every single person does this. Don't sit there thinking, no, I'm 100% myself. It's like, you either don't know yourself or you don't know the game that well, little bro. So during the beginning, you're acting a bit like the person you're really not. You're taking her to these really nice restaurants that you know damn well you can't actually afford. She's gonna be laughing at every single one of your stupid jokes, even though you're not really that funny. All it really is dopamine, oxytocin, and a bit of novelty. Every single thing about you and her is totally new. And everything that you discover about the person just makes you want to learn more about them. I mean, it's a very common thing that we all experience whenever we're jumping in with somebody new. And the thing is, none of it's necessarily bad. But here's what happens. In order to keep up this facade, and that's what it is at its baseline, okay? It's a facade that I'm putting on for her and for me because I'm getting something out of this dynamic, usually sex. And guys, she's doing the exact same thing. But playing that role of your perfect girlfriend takes emotional energy. And she cannot act like that or keep up that emotional energy for long. Think of it like going on a jog. Some girls are able to jog for a block before they get tired. Some girls can go a mile before they get tired. The point is, no matter how fast she runs or how good she looks when she runs, there's going to come a time early on in your relationship, in your new dynamic, that she's not going to have the emotional energy to keep up the facade that she was putting on for you. The same goes for you as well. This is what we call the end of the honeymoon phase because the facade finally drops. You finally let the mask fall and you let her see a little bit of who you really are. Turns out you're not actually that funny. Turns out you fart in your sleep like every other guy. Turns out she takes a dump in the morning like every other girl. It's these unattractive qualities that every single person has, but nobody really wants to admit, especially on like a first date or something. But that's where the realness of the relationship comes from, is that after the novelty fades, the mask has fallen, I can see you for who you really are, even just a little, and she can see me for who I really am, even if it's just a little. I can actually start to build a foundation now because it's not just dopamine. It's not just oxytocin. It's not just novelty right now. I'm actually learning, finally, after the honeymoon phase, I'm finally learning who you really are. And what people often find is that they're not really that compatible with that other person. You were just projecting everything that you wanted onto that person. And now that all of that dopamine has wore off, now you're left with the actual person. And that actual person is not as impressive as the show that they were putting on for you. So the honeymoon phase ending is a good thing. It's going to happen. You are going to go through the honeymoon phase. You are going to project a version of yourself that's not 100% true and authentic for the other person. And it's going to end. All of those things are normal. All of those things are fine. But what you'll typically find is that afterwards, if there's no real compatibility, people start to run into real problems here. That's why you hear so many stories of situationships that only lasted a month or two or even a few weeks, because the honeymoon phase is now over and you get to see the person for who they really are, and it turns out maybe they don't even like you that much, or you don't even like them. You liked the idea of them. You were falling for what you thought they were. You weren't in love with them though. You were in love with, yes, the version of them that they brought up, but you were also in love with how they made you feel about yourself. Maybe she made you feel like you were James Bond. She complimented you on every single thing, like opening the door for her. She just swooned over you because, no other guy's ever opened a door for her. What's the classic line? I've never done this with anybody. It's like, yeah, right, this week. They tell you things like that. Look, don't be upset or mad over these things. She's just trying to please you. I mean, this is all fine. The point is, nobody can sustain that level of intensity for long, and it's totally normal. So when the brain settles, whenever that high comes down, reality kicks in. And oftentimes reality is not as attractive as fantasy. That's why we call it fantasy projection. One of the things that will shorten the honeymoon phase, and it's not a bad thing, is that the closer you get to the realness of that other person, the more that the fantasy will fade, or at least the quicker it fades. You start noticing the other person's flaws, you start noticing their patterns, and you start seeing the versions of the other person that aren't so attractive. And again, everybody has those versions. And it feels like you're falling out of love with the other person. She's going to feel like she's starting to fall out of love with you. But what it really is the end of the illusion, not the end of the relationship. See, before you were just dating their highlight reel. Now you're actually getting the real them, the real emotions, the real conflict of who they really are. And like I said, most people mistake this for the end of the relationship because they can sense that things between you have cooled off. And now you start to get a little anxious. You start to say, oh my God, this was so good a week ago. You know, what happened? I've got to do something to fix this. But that's the illusion of action. You don't need to do anything to re-attract the woman who's already attracted to you. Now, here's the key thing that I want you to understand. You're going to feel like the spark is gone, but it's really the beginning of an actual bond. This is where a mature person will understand and will stick around because they understand what's about to form is about to be real. Whereas the immature, typically the young, will run because the high's worn off now. I'm done with you. I'm going on to the next high. Because Hollywood, Disney, the myth of Prince Charming has a whole generation of men into thinking that this kind of stuff is normal. And it's not. They fooled women into thinking that that honeymoon phase should last forever. How you feel, how Cinderella felt when she found Prince Charming is supposed to last forever. If there's one day that goes by where you don't feel like that, you dump him and you find somebody else. And you just keep chasing that high over and over and over and over and over again. And you just keep racking up those bodies, man, because nothing really matters anymore. You find a man who makes you feel a certain way because your feelings are all that matters. And all that really does is feed a woman's ego without feeding her femininity. So again, this is where emotional maturity is tested because you've got to understand that the honeymoon phase does not last forever. Ladies, again, you're not going to wake up and just feel like screwing your husband's brains out every single day. I'll even go out on a limb here and say that you won't feel like that most days. It's absolutely normal. But what we have is at least one generation, which was mine, which is the millennials. I see the same thing in Gen Z, is that we have an entire generation or two of people who this is all they do is they chase that emotional high at the beginning. They chase the honeymoon phase. Once the honeymoon phase is over, it's on to the next. And once that honeymoon phase is over, it's on to the next. Because if you don't make me feel like this 24/7, that means I'm not in love with you and we're done. Those types of people cannot handle actual intimacy. Those types of people leave a relationship, not when things get hard, just when the emotional high dies down. And that's why most guys will sit there and think, what happened? Like, we were doing so well. I mean, then, we just had a week where it was kind of plain and boring, but she just left. Like, I found her, texting another guy a week later. What happened? But that's exactly what happened. And ladies, I'm not necessarily picking on you here because, the same goes true for guys, is that once that high is over, most people, they just find somebody else. Anyone who can give them that high again is going to get in. That's it. This is especially true if you're dating an avoidant because they run when things get real. And the quicker that things get real, the faster the honeymoon phase dies and they run. I was in a situationship with an avoidant that lasted 1 week. Ask me how I know. How do you navigate this, knowing what's going on? First off, you understanding it already brings you to a level that most people just simply cannot comprehend. See, what you're building after the excitement dies down is emotional safety. It's saying to the other person, male or female, that, hey, when things get boring between us, it's okay. We can just stay in and watch Netflix tonight. I really don't care. That kind of safety lets the other person exist in that relationship without constantly falling apart and wondering where we are. You'll find that the people who are toxic, who constantly want that high and cannot exist in that relationship without that high, will purposefully cause chaos in order to simply feel something. Because anything around a baseline of what would be considered an average human emotion is just not okay with them. They've got to have that constant high, that constant validation. If you don't give it to them, they will cause the end of that relationship just to feel something again. It's those people that are addicted to trauma. They're addicted to chaos, and that's the same type of people that will go back to toxic exes over and over and over and over because they have no idea what they're really chasing is just the high. That's it. They're no different than a drug addict. They don't know what it's like to be in a relationship that actually offers safety because they interpret that safety as boring, as boredom. Just so we're clear, no, you should not date those people. Real love begins when comfort ends. The real couples who last for years are not the ones who fall off. They're not the ones that cause chaos just to cause chaos. They're the ones who know that things are going to go in stages. You're going to feel those highs on some days again. You absolutely will. You're also going to feel those lows. But most days you're going to feel the average, which makes it the average, which is a bit of boredom. And the real ones know how to rebuild and regrow and simply weather those little bitty storms. Because what you're really weathering aren't storms, they're just the average everyday life. And for some reason, Hollywood has convinced entire generations that if every single day is not a total high greater than the last, then you just get rid of them, man, and get somebody who, will make you feel that high again. If you've been in a 10-year relationship with somebody and have kids, that doesn't matter. The barista down at Starbucks made you feel butterflies. That means it's love and you never loved your partner. You need to get away from them and actually be with somebody you love because your entire life is built around you finding happiness, right? Right? Don't fall for that crap. Find meaning in life. I don't care how happy you are. Final message, the honeymoon phase is easy. It's automatic, it's dopamine, it's a wonderful chemical concoction. Lean into it, man. Enjoy it while it lasts. But real connection is a choice, and that choice only comes after the honeymoon phase ends and you guys get a little bit boring with one another. And then you find out who the other person really is, if they really just wanted that dopamine or if they were really after you. So guys, if things start to cool off, the worst thing you can do is to try and pursue that high again, because that's what you're really doing. When she stops responding so sweetly to your text, or maybe just a few hours later, it's usually in the beginning of things, it's just the honeymoon phase dying out. It's not that she's losing interest. Things are just becoming a bit boring. And guys want to initiate that all over again. They think that, man, I got to keep this honeymoon phase going. That's how I'm going to keep her. But the thing is, if she doesn't stay during those boring days, those boring moments, you didn't have a chance to begin with. So you texting her over pursuing her, which is usually where this starts, is simply going to drive her further away. You don't chase the high. You lean into the actual emotional work. That's how love and relationships can actually start and get an actual foundation, and how you can get an actual bond. The brutal truth is anybody can love you when things are new, but the ones that are worth keeping will love you when things get real. Lil bro, lil sis, you've got this, and I've got you. I'll see you in the next one.